Aloha, I'm JayDreamerZ. Welcome to my channel. Are you interested in the lore and the strange anomalies that happen up in places like Mount Shasta? Or are you interested in phantom islands, lost continents like Lemuria or Atlantis? Well, those are the things that we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to my channel, everybody. Good to see everyone in the live chat and everyone in the future who's watching as well. So check this out. This is a newspaper article from nearly 100 years ago that talks about this research expedition that was led by a particular individual, and they were going to go, allegedly, to a secret area in the Mount Shasta region where one guy had found a cave that led down inside of the earth, and at the last moment, the expedition leader disappeared. So I have the entire article. We're going to read that one and go over that in just a second too. But before we do, what I want to do is give you a little insight into the guy that found this secret cave. And it was up in Mount Shasta too. And a lot of interesting things have been happening around the Mount Shasta region. I've had so many comments from people, especially after the last couple of videos we've done where we broke down the Urbano Monte map. And especially whenever we talked about that area that is described as Japan on the map. However, it looks a lot like Lemuria and ancient Lemuria. It fits a lot of the descriptions. A lot of people have left comments talking about Mount Shasta and to look into Mount Shasta. There's some really interesting stories, specifically those that surround Saint Germain and various discussions that one particular allegedly had with Saint Germain himself. And of course, the underground lost Lemurian cities of survivors that fled to the Mount Shasta area, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So the man that had found it, his name is J.C. Brown, and nobody knows where he is today. Nobody knows what happened to him, but this was around the early 1900s. He was a geologist and a treasure hunter, and went down to the Cascades of California to look for gold. Right. His people that he worked for had him go down there to prospect for gold, to check out good mining locations. When he was down there, he basically came down to the base of a cliff and he saw that there was something strange about the rocks in that area. So he started to clear everything away from that area. And underneath the clearing, he unearthed a tunnel, a strange tunnel that they say it was about 10 feet high by 7 feet wide, and it curved going down inside of the earth. So he followed it. He went down inside of this tunnel, right? Whenever he got all the way down to where the tunnel opened up, it says that he had found all kinds of different treasures, various instruments and treasures that were made out of gold specifically, that there were some golden tablets with strange writing on it. And it says he reported seeing hieroglyphics and cuneiform writing, which also reminds me a lot of the story of Kincaid, right? There's a man named Kincaid who allegedly was hired by the Smithsonian to go down into the Grand Canyon and also be a treasure hunter of sorts, right? No one ever heard from Kincaid ever again after he came back and reported that he had found similar to what this guy, J.C. Brown, had found in Mount Shasta. Kincaid also reported something very similar, having found the strange golden treasure trove inside of one of the cavernous areas in the Grand Canyon. And that guy also went by 2 initials, and he was never heard from again. Really strange coincidences. But anyways, the person that we're talking about now, J.C. Brown, he went down inside of this treasure trove. He looked around, he checked everything out. He even found some strange objects with strange properties that he couldn't figure out how it worked. Basically, something along the lines of some sort of what appeared to be copper spears that you could bend and it would snap back to its original position or whatever. You could bend it in different ways, and it was allegedly looked like it was made out of copper. He also found what he describes as a worship room that contained strange statues that glowed in the dark, various solar symbols and symbols of things up in the sky, strange writings, etc. He also reports to have allegedly found a chamber where he counted 27 giant skeletons that were laid out along the wall. The smallest of those skeletons was 6'6". So he found giant skeletons of giants. The tallest was over 10 feet in height. So he found some interesting different rooms that appeared to be of maybe royalty or something. And he thought that they were the tomb chambers of some sort of lost Lemurian king or queen or something. So he leaves the area. He goes back up to the top. He covers his tracks. He covers up the entrance to this tunnel or whatever. And he starts to research. He comes back to the site time and time again. And eventually he starts to talk to some people about it up in the Northern California area, in the Stockton area, which is where we're going to get into and segue into this newspaper clipping. So it says that he was fascinated with the continent of Lemuria, specifically after this alleged find, and he started reading the writings of James Churchward, which we also referenced and talked about during our breakdown of the Urbano Monte map, specifically part 2, I think it was, or no, part 1, where we went over that strange Japanese island mass. So he starts researching, and he starts looking into the lost continent of Lemuria /Mu/Pan. And he was convinced that he had found proof, definitive proof, that there was some sort of a lost continent or a lost tribe of people. At the very least, he knew he had discovered proof of giants existing, right? He was 79 years old. Check that out. He shows up in Stockton, California. And, some people had heard about his discovery. He had leaked it out to certain people who seemed to be interested. And they all started getting together to make plans to go on an expedition to this area to go uncover, these cavernous systems and stuff. But at the last second, he disappeared. No one ever heard from him ever again. The strange thing, or one of the many strange things, is that he never asked for a dime from any of these people that he got together or anything. It's not like he took their money and ran or anything. He just disappeared off the face of the earth, apparently. All right, sweet. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Let's jump into the article here. I do want to just double check the chat real quick, make sure everybody's good. Oh, right on. Hey, it's good to see everybody in the chat. I see everyone. Good to see you there. All right, cool. So let's check out this article. I'm going to read this entire article, so there's no need to zoom in or anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and read it. You can easily find this article on the internet, but I'll go ahead and read it for us. This was printed in the early 1900s, and it says, 80 Stocktonians from Stockton, California, were left behind in search for a lost continent. Followers hold an all-night vigil. Hold on. Let's do this. There we go. I'm gonna play some images in the background so that you can have something to look at while we read the article. So it says 80 Stocktonians were left behind in search for a lost continent. Followers hold an all-night vigil for the missing leader on a trip to find a weird cave. The disappearance of their chief leaves a group of local people enlisted in mysterious mission pondering their next step. A surprised promise unit fails to materialize while many hold nocturnal watch to await J.C. Brown's return. 80 Stockton citizens today attempted to piece together reasons for the disappearance of J.C. Brown, a 79-year-old geologist who had promised to lead them to riches hidden by the lost race of Lemuria. Police, too, were interested and sought Brown out for purposes of questioning. Brown began organizing a band of followers here 6 weeks ago after telling a Stockton newspaperman that in 1904 he discovered a tunnel in the Cascade Mountains leading to a cavern filled with relics of an apparently lost race. The newspaperman took Brown to Harry Noyes Pratt, curator of the Hagen Memorial Museum, who gave him a whole list of people who might be interested in Brown's story. Among them was John C. Root, retired printer, 1784 North Salon Wacon Street, Root took Brown into his house, and gradually an organization was formed with the purpose of participating in an expedition and exploration of Brown's cavern. Interesting that his name is Brown, too. I don't know if you knew this, but we broke down the movie Back to the Future, the whole trilogy, but specifically in part 3, Doc Brown makes a casual, quick reference to also being a part of an expedition that was going into the hollow recesses of the earth, which I thought was an interesting part of that movie. All right, so followers total 80. Meetings were held twice daily, and the followers grew to 80 in number. Brown's original story expanded to such an extent that his followers were told, and many believed, that the cavern held the secret to the lost race and continent of Lemuria. Brown, despite the fact that in an earlier part of the year he had lived in the federal shelter, allegedly told his organization that he was worth $40 million and owned 5 boats, one of which, a glass-bottom craft, would arrive here Sunday to pick up the party north to search for the lost continent off of the coast of Washington. Now, I will say this, remember, he was allegedly a gold prospector, right? So his story, if you read it and you do some research into Brown's story, is basically that he's very rich, he's very wealthy, but he was very paranoid as well because he knows what happens to rich and wealthy people if they hang out with the common people, and he enjoyed hanging out with the common people. So oftentimes, according to him, he would disguise himself. You know what I mean? He would basically try to fit in like Aladdin. Or not Aladdin, but Jasmine in the movie Aladdin, the Disney one, right? Where she tries to hide herself amongst the common people so that she can have that experience. So that's sort of one of his reasonings for appearing to be so poor, but in reality, he's super rich. All right, moving forward, let's continue reading. Gave up positions. Gradually, as Brown's story expanded, some of his followers report mysticism, occultism, and other isms entered into the organization's discussions. As well it should, right? That's one of the first things I would like to talk about is the philosophy, is tossing around ideas of what's going on. Where is this from? Where could it be from? What's the, what are the connections? What other connections can we make now that we have found this type of stuff? All right, so people started talking, basically. Some, it's reported, actually gave up positions and disposed of furniture and other belongings so that they would be free to accompany Brown on the expedition. So a lot of people sold their stuff. They were dedicated to going on this expedition. Now, keep in mind, this was not something that they had to pay for. He wasn't trying to, throw a fundraiser or anything for people to go find some secret location. Everything was paid for and free by the individuals in the group, right? All right, so leaving Root's home yesterday morning, Brown left word that a surprise awaited his followers if they would gather at the Root home at 1 p.m. So people began to arrive before noon, and most of them remained until early this morning. Brown failed to return. Proof demanded. Brown had claimed that he had photographs and other proof of his discovery in a Texas bank. This proof was demanded of him recently by curator Pratt, and it is understood was given to Pratt yesterday, or the latter would withdraw from any further dealings in the matter. Some of Brown's followers today were of the belief that the man manufactured the fantastic story from one of the Bulwer Lytton's novels. Some, however, clung to the belief that Brown would return and make good on his promise to reveal the lost city. So he sets up a time and a place to meet all of these other 80 people that have also expressed sincere interest in going on an expedition and an excavation as well. And then mysteriously, he just doesn't show up to something that he seems so adamant and knowledgeable about, with no indication that there's any sort of trickery involved. So naturally, people start throwing around ideas. What do you think happened to him? Oh, I think that he just, pulled a fast one over our eyes. I think it was a prank. Some people might have those types of thoughts. Others were not so easily convinced or dismissive of his absence. Other people said, hey, wait a minute, this is really strange and really weird. And the people that didn't believe it basically were like, maybe he was just following after fantasy stories, basically, right? which makes sense because all of our fantasy stories come from truth and they come from reality. So it's easy to dismiss it in that kind of a way. All right, and then other people thought that he was just delayed, he was going to come back. Regardless, every single person stayed up into the wee hours of the next day waiting for him, wondering what happened to him. Now, meetings at the Root home, it goes on to say, attracted the attention of neighbors, some of whom thought political meetings were in progress. The police, however, began inquiring into the matter when it received a report that a Silver Shirt organization was being formed. This report was denied in the record Saturday by Root, who, however, declined to reveal the purpose of their meetings. One of the followers, who today still clung to his belief in Brown, said that he had psychic information that Mr. Brown is all right. Amnesia victim. On an index card at the federal shelter is listed information that Brown suffered as an amnesia victim in 1932 and that he entertained fears from time to time that he was being followed. He told his followers that's funny that he has followers, but he's afraid of being followed. He told his followers that being a millionaire, he feared being kidnapped and therefore appeared incognito. One of the leaders of the organization denied this afternoon that the organization was a religious cult. So naturally, whenever you have people getting together and they have, they have wonder-filled ideas about various things that are not common to the mainstream methods of thought, naturally, oftentimes it's easy to be dismissive of them as well and just throw out the label of a cult. You know what I mean? Pretty much any YouTube channel, including myself, that has like over, 1,000 followers or something, people could definitely say that they're all cults or they have cult-like qualities or whatever. But really, it's just a following of people who are interested in similar things. Now, it goes on to say, Brown had a most fascinating story, and most of those attending the meetings were interested in the study of mysticism and occultism. As am I. That's why we're going over this. Unless a person understands or he has some knowledge of these matters, he could not understand the meetings, the leader said, which I couldn't agree with more. If people are not well-versed and studied in these types of fringe, occult, esoteric, and arcane mysteries, when you just come right out with it, it's hard for people to follow along. There's no bridge that has been built from the modern academic world of the mainstream to the fringe and beyond. And they need that bridge built for them so that they can get across. You know what I mean? What's Lemuria? The article goes on to say, the natural question of the initiated is, what is the lost continent of Lemuria? After much poring over the encyclopedias, one finds that it is a mythical continent believed by scientists to hold the key to a lost civilization. Now remember, this was written a long time ago, right? Almost 100 years ago. And even then, they're saying that there was scientists, generalized scientists, believed in this sunken land, right? As do many people with so many other phantom islands and missing continents and hidden places, just like we've been talking about with Hyperborea and Atlantis. A well-educated man, Brown achieved what he had been told would be impossible. The organizing of a large party without a semblance of proof for the fantastic story, which he used as a lure. So, hold on. Before I go on, I just want to point out, this is the article, this is the person who wrote the article, imposing their own bias upon what actually happened, because obviously they weren't there in person, right? So whenever they say things like organizing a large party without semblance of proof for the fantastic story, that's in the eyes of the beholder. That is in the ears of the listener, if it is considered a semblance of proof or not. Because I have found an abundance of proof and evidence for phantom islands, missing lands, legendary times where the world was completely different. However, it's proof only to me. It's not proof for any of you. It's my own path. It's my own walk that I have. All right, continuing along, it says, and also the part where he says that he used the story as a lure. I don't like how that's phrased. That's just me. But obviously, no one can say if he was luring people, you know what I mean? That sounds kind of like deceptive on their part. All right, continuing on. That question today has police, as well as his followers, some of them unshaken in their faith, pondering. I like how the police are like, wanting to ask so many different questions and stuff. Like it's almost like this dude is, like the police have their eye on him, like automatically thinking that he's done something wrong just because he has a bunch of people that don't believe in the mainstream official stories, getting together and hanging out and talking about it. Be careful, because that happens time and time again in our world. When you get a lot of people who are interested in alternative truths, or truths that are different from those that are commonly accepted by the sheep of the world, when we all get together and start putting our minds together, then all of a sudden the police are involved. You got spies and people who are trying to like report the gatherings of people or the illegal gatherings. Sometimes it's religious in nature, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's straight up outlawed by the country, like by the kings or queens or presidents. All right. It goes on to say that he was a well-educated man. Brown achieved what most thought would be impossible. It goes on to say, what was his objective? That question today had police as well as his followers, some of them unshaken yet in their faith, pondering. Never sought money. The article goes on to say, so far as police or the writer have been able to discover, Brown never asked for 1 cent while in Stockton. The only money which he received from any person was $5 given by a friend while the man lived at the federal shelter, so far as could be learned. The only other question is Brown's mental state. Now, that's the only other question for the writer of the article, okay? The only other question is Brown's mental state. How about the question of like, could it be real? Could this be true? What if it was true? Why would he all of a sudden go missing if there was, any veracity to his story, right? That's another question, but he doesn't want to ask that question. The only other question, the article says, is Brown's mental state. Those with whom he associated asserted that he's rational, despite a notion on his federal shelter record that he was an amnesia victim in 1932, and on 3 occasions reported that somebody was following and threatening him. Now, do you see how they do that? Right? They take like little tiny instances that they don't know if they're related or not, and they try to weave together this story that he's some crazy homeless guy. You know what I mean? That got together 80 people and then just ditched them for no reason, right? And this is common as well, especially with geniuses or people who have the ability to tap into the ether or to receive communication from higher sources, we'll say, or other methods, right? Oftentimes the people are deemed to be crazy. They're deemed to be some sort of mental problem. They're out of their minds. You know what I mean? It's easy to dismiss anything that is contrary to mainstream beliefs. The mainstream is taught to easily dismiss these things. All right, let's continue on. Let's see. The fear that he had met with foul play was expressed last night amongst those who waited for in Root's home for his return, as they gathered in the house, on the front porch, and in the backyard, awaiting his surprise. Masters not ready. The article goes on to say, among those who waited, one could count those imbued with the spirit of the seed that was sown by Brown, that the mysterious excursions aboard a glass-bottomed boat, a story which did not figure in Brown's original tale, had not been willed by the Indian masters to start at this time. Now, what they're referring to are ascended masters, right? They're referring to legendary beings or spirit beings that have allegedly ascended, right? Or transformed, we'll say, right? Gone through some sort of a transformation. And it's like they leveled up, right? If it was a video game, an ascended master is somebody who levels up really high, basically. Brown had told them that the time was near at hand. Also, speaking of ascended masters, now that I'm thinking about it, Saint Germain also was said to be an ascended master, and he was also associated with Mount Shasta in this particular region, and also associated with underground cavernous systems and tunnels. Interesting. Brown had told them that the time was at hand. Who are the Indian masters? They are the masterminds traced to East Indian mysticism, who ruled Brown's actions, who protected him, and who were told, and who were to tell him when the time was propitious for the start of the expedition. So basically what some of these followers who were left behind were saying was like, hey man, he was in touch with these ascended masters. You know, I mean, this is just side conversation, but basically there was a theory that he was led by these positive higher forces or powers to not show up that night because it was not time for that secret to be released. That's just one of the theories. Also, I would love to hear your theories too. If you're watching and you want to jump into the chat and share some of your theories with us, or if you're a future person, drop some of your theories and ideas about Mount Shasta, Lemuria, or anything of a related nature in the comments below. All right, let's continue on. All right, the article goes on to say, and it's quoting one of the attendees, "It was the will of the masters," one man said, while he sat smoking out in front of his porch. "If the masters could not protect him, they could not protect us whenever we got there. We could all be annihilated in 5 minutes. He didn't say where he's going, did he? No. He always went alone. Perhaps he was kidnapped. He had been once before, you know. He promised us a surprise. Well, it's here, isn't it? He didn't return at 1 o'clock. So one of the witnesses, that's their own personal quote. Here's Brown's weird tale of a lost village. Brown's original story, as told to a representative of the record. Hold on, let me start that over. Brown's original story, as told to a representative of the record a month and a half ago, probably for the first time in Stockton, minus details concerning his personal history, is as follows. All right, that was a long-winded way of saying, here's what Brown told the newspaper guy. And he goes on to say, I quote, "I found this cave while working in the Cascade Mountains for my Lord Cowdray Mining Company of England. I noticed a section of rock in the face of the cliff which did not jibe with the formation of the rest of the mass. After removing the rock, I entered a tunnel which curved downward. 3 miles from the mouth of the tunnel, which was 7 feet wide and 10 feet high, I struck a cross-section where this ancient race apparently had mined copper. The air in one section was bad. I believe that the other cross-sections outcropped in some of the other parts of the mountain. The decline continued, and 11 miles inside of the mountain and approximately 2,300 feet from the surface, I struck what I call the village." The next section is titled Filled with Tablets. He goes on to say 2 rooms, about 12 by 20 feet, were filled with copper and gold tablets, about 3 or 4 inches and concave, so that one laid aside on the other. The rooms were literally full of these plates, inscribed very neatly. Another room contained many weapons. The tempered copper spears were so that one could bend the head of the weapon all the way back to the base of the shaft, and it would spring back into place. Streets were laid out. Streets were laid out in the village. In one long room were laid at angles to the walls 27 skeletons, the smallest of which was 6 feet 6 inches, and the tallest was more than 10 feet. In another room lay, apparently embalmed by some secret process, the bodies of a man and a woman dressed in royal robes, whom I believe were the king and queen of this race. The worship room was beautiful to behold. There were on the walls of this room 3 great crosses, not of the conventional modern type, and a sun designed, worked in copper and gold. The streamers from the sun were worked in gold stringers, and there were, I believe, 13 statues that were made of copper and gold. The lost race. I believe, he goes on to say, that this race of people forms an important link in the ancient American civilization. They were highly skilled craftsmen, as their work shows. Because there was a glow to 3 of these statues, I believe that they used radium, and I believe that it was with the use of radium that they tempered the copper. My wish is to enlist a corps of trained people, whom I shall pay well for their services, to assist me in cataloging these specimens. I want the relics in this cave to remain intact. Those in 2 other caves which I have located may go to those who aid me. Claimed pictures. Pardon me. He goes on to say, in a vault in a Texas bank, I have pictures of this scene and papers. You see, my family planned to exploit the cave themselves. My wife's father, my wife, my 2 daughters, and an old college chum. A series of tragedies struck me. First one died, then another. One was killed in an accident, and the others died. I was hurt in an accident, and I lost all heart in this ambition. But I'm getting back on my feet again, and if my health holds out, I'll get started. So what does that mean? Basically, he's saying, I told my closest friends and family about this, and mysteriously, under strange circumstances, they all died, one after another. And he basically lost all motivation to go back to this place or to even get a bunch of people to go back there with him, right? But then as he started to get a little older, he started to change his mind. He goes on to say, have you ever studied or read anything about the lost continent of Lemuria? Scientists claim it is the connecting link in the story of civilization. Now, I'm going to jump in real quick. He says during his time in a different age that scientists claim this, right? Which is really interesting because scientists would not claim this today. The world changes quite quickly. All right, he goes on to say, I believe here is the key to that lost continent. And as an epilogue to J.C. Brown's story, years later, a doctor who was a part of Brown's expedition wrote the following. I was a curious young man at the time, always interested in occult lore. Anything that smelled of adventure grabbed my interest. Brown's stories were fascinating. Many have been tall stories about mythical beings by an old man looking for companionship. Somehow over the years, I've gained respect for the old man. I believe that he was telling the truth. I don't know his reasons, but I think that he changed his mind at the last minute and decided not to reveal the location of the lost treasure vault of the Lemurian giants. And that is the article. What do you guys think of that? Isn't that interesting? I also find it really interesting. Hold on, let me take these pictures down real quick. I also find it really interesting, the connection that I've seen with these various lost treasures that end up being a type of cursed treasure, right? Specifically those treasures that are located in a cave, in a deep cavernous opening, like the kind that goes way down inside of the earth. Many times they're cursed, right? The people that try to go in to find these lost treasures, they're told, do not seek the treasure. Like they have been warned time and time again to be extra careful or to just avoid altogether going down into the bowels of the earth to seek out these types of buried treasures. Not to say that they don't exist, just saying that the inner earth is an entirely different world, different and apart from the surface where we live. All right, cool. Let me jump back into the chat real quick. Oh, I want to share one more thing too, since I'm sharing all this stuff. So I was researching Mount Shasta, right? Many people have been leaving really good comments, including some of their own research and anomalies with Mount Shasta, Lemuria, many different things. Well, it led me down a path that took me to something on the internet called the Saint Germain Foundation, because I was researching Saint Germain, and it all sounded very intriguing and very interesting, and I was really enjoying the stories that I was coming across. So I came to this website called the Saint Germain Foundation, and I believe that much of their knowledge is channeled, that it comes through channels and whatnot. However, there is this book. I want to read just a short piece of this book, right? And also, I'll also freely say that much of the information that comes from various legends and descriptions of Atlantis, Lemuria, stuff like that, oftentimes it can also be channeled as well. Me personally, I never dismiss any material that's called channeled material just because it's called that. You know what I mean? what I do is I see what vibes. I allow myself to research and to be open to whatever, the channeled material is. And then I just go with what resonates. I just go with what vibes, just like I expect all of you to do on my channel, right? Because I am literally a channel. So take what resonates, right? If something doesn't resonate, don't get stuck on that. That's not the path. That's not an easy path forward. The easier path forward is to take what resonates or to go find something that does resonate. All right. So let me read this little excerpt from this book. Now, this book is called The Unveiled Mysteries Book, the original volume 1. And there's this poem in here. Really interesting poem. The whole book seems really interesting, but I only skimmed over it. But this poem caught my eye, and it's called The Mighty Royal Teton. Check this out. And then I'm going to come back to Mount Shasta. Here's the poem, The Mighty Royal Teton. Now, I have done some, just real quick. Okay, the word Teton, as I've explained many times in the past, I have found that the root of it is the word tet. You could say toot, tet, tit, teet, all kinds of different variations with the vowel sounds in between those two letter T's. Sometimes they're pronounced as D's in some other languages too. But it is a marker, and it represents the basket, the bread basket of our world, the center place of our world. It's always a circle with an X or a cross in the middle, which has also turned into a religious symbol. But that is the tet. The teton or the teton are those from the tet, from the breadbasket of the world, from that particular location. And it goes on to say, O mighty royal Teton bright, great mountain of God's power, of cosmic light supreme over all, whose light rays every hour charge through our land blessed victory's might, and God's all-seeing eye, forever acting through light rays, observes all, you and I. Beloved royal Teton fair, great mountain of God's light. From thy loved star of golden jewels, the central sun's true might, pour out thy gifts beyond compare, thy life in freedom's name, whose cosmic splendor all shall see, the mighty unfed flame. Majestic, royal Teton true, great mountain of God's love, thy blessed presence on this earth, God's fiat from above, is evermore life's altar too, from which the great I Am comes forth in power none can stay, and speaks the great command. O glorious royal Teton pure, great mountain of God's peace, where precious Lanto's song has served to give mankind release. Through thy great heart, which shall endure, now bursts the cosmic light, and sweeps from our America all else but victory's might. O blazing royal Teton high, great mountain of love's flame, outpouring through thy mighty heart, the light from Venus came, and Cyclopia through God's eye now sends forth unto all the crystal rays that set earth free in answer to our call. O blessed royal Teton light, great mountain all divine, within thy heart awaits the cup, which makes our life all thine. Its pulsing essence is thy might, we now drink from its brim. We are the I Am Presence, heart, the seven Elohim. I thought that was an awesome poem also. Plus, I was also reminded while I was sharing that poem, I found so many ancient poems that seem to be clearly describing elements of the red sky world, like we've talked about. We're describing the blue beam from Mount Meru, the surrounding sky beams from other inner earth entrances and whatnot. I've found so many amazing poems, and this is interesting too. They say that inside of Mount Shasta, that there is an entire hollowed out underground city that goes down and leads down into the inner earth recesses, right? And that the Lemurians knew ahead of time what was going to happen to their island, to their continent, that it would sink into the sea. Another interesting thing about Lemuria is that it's basically the land the legends about the land indicate that it is land all the way inside of what is commonly known as the Ring of Fire. And the legends also talk about, although it was a deluge, although it sank down into the ocean, it was more considered a fire apocalypse than it was a water apocalypse, because there was so much fire, basically probably from surrounding volcanoes all over the place too. Another interesting thing is that they said that the Lemurians had a heads up, right? That there were many advanced and wise among them who knew that an apocalypse was coming. And this is not the only time that we've heard of this, that wise people or pure of heart or certain blessed prophets of old, that they had a heads up too, that they knew that the end was coming. So the story goes that some of the Lemurian tribes went all the way out to the area of California. And if you paid attention during me breaking down the Urbano Monte map, you can see that it looks like there is an alternative California. There's a whole different California. I'm not talking about the Baja Mexico or anything, which is way further south. I'm talking about another piece of California that was already broken off into the ocean, right? Probably giving rise to our modern fears and old wives' tales and stuff, that one day California is probably going to break into the ocean, right? Why is that a thing? Because it is a thing. Because it's happened already, and it will happen again. It's destined to return. Everything that is hidden, everything that is covered up, everything that is concealed will one day be revealed. It has to, according to the laws of cycles and rhythms. These things will come back to us, and we're just now being shown many of these ancient worlds, or what I call ancient Oblivion, that is returned to us as we start to collectively remember a stranger time when our world was completely different, that gives rise to all of our inspiration that is let out in the form of fantasy and fiction, sci-fi, nursery rhymes, all these types of old tales and whatnot. Another thing is that when these survivors of Lemuria, when they had packed themselves into this mountain, right? The legend says that, only a few of them actually were able to make it into the mountain, and a few would be like 25,000, right? Because the lands of Lemuria were said to be, somewhere around 65 million, right? Just like in modern day America, that's the population of Lemuria itself. Now, Lemuria is not just confined to any one small area in the Pacific, right? Lemuria seems to have extended a vast amount of land in the Pacific Ocean, extending all the way down into Australia, all the way into the Peloponnesian Islands, even all the way out to the tip of India and Madagascar. Now, Madagascar is key in trying to understand how this island continent named Lemuria got its name. It's named for the lemur monkeys. Let me go ahead and put those pictures back up too, so I'm not just talking. Boom. There we go. Oh, there it is right there. See? So this is actually one of Churchward's, his own little maps that he had drawn. Interesting, because Lemuria goes by different names to different cultures. Some called it Lemuria, and that stems from the lemur monkeys, specifically the lemur monkeys of Madagascar. Check this out. There are animals that are called endemic animals. Endemic means that they're only located in one particular area. Almost every single time, I've looked up all kinds of different endemic animals. Almost every single time, they're on a small island that they have no business being on. No one knows how they got there. The only thing that people can come up with is the idea of land bridges. And most of your modern scholars and academics will not consider catastrophism as being responsible for what's going on. They especially will not consider that there is an entire world that lies below our feet filled with life, and that life is able to come up to the surface and pop on out and make a home up here with us. Right? They don't consider those things. Some example of endemic animals are the lemurs, for example, right? Lemurs are endemic to Madagascar. That means they only, for the most part, live in Madagascar. That's their home. How did they get there? They can't swim. You know what I mean? So what modern academics says is they start fantasizing in their minds, and they're like, oh, well, it must be because of continental drifting of the continents over millions of years, etc. And then Madagascar over millions of years, and the lemurs just staying lemurs forever, I guess, was somehow connected to the tip of India or whatever. So they don't believe in catastrophism. They adamantly say time and time again, there's no way that entire continents can just sink under the water, that they can sink under the land. Alternatively, they also say there's no way that entire continents can just rise up out of the ocean. The earth doesn't move up that quick, and it doesn't drop down that fast. Even though you can easily look up a YouTube video that shows the earth breathing in that forest. Have you seen that one? It looks like the earth just keeps going up and down, and it expands and then it goes out. Anyways, my point is that there are these endemic animals. For example, the Galapagos giant tortoises that we've talked about when we broke down that movie Extinct, right? How did they get there? How did they get to that island, these giant Galapagos tortoises? And why do many of these animals live for such extended lengths of time? Or they're very large animals as well. Like, like things like the tortoises are huge, gigantic turtles. We've got various forms of penguins, giant birds. What's up, V? Welcome to my channel. Different types of sea lions are endemic. The Galapagos flycatcher, many animals that live in the Galapagos. The island fox, the kiwi, right? All of these are endemic animals. Very interesting. So anyways, when these survivors from Lemuria packed into Mount Shasta and they made themselves at home, it's said that while the apocalypse was happening outside of the mountain, right, that they all joined hands and started singing together, almost like in How the Grinch Stole Christmas, how the Who's of Whoville are like, Yahoo Story, or whatever the song is, right? Just like that. But they say that they sang the song Auld Lang Syne. Isn't that interesting? I don't know if it was last New Year's. I think it was the New Year's before last. I had posted something in my community section breaking down that song. I think it's still there, actually. You just have to scroll down a bunch. But I broke down this song, Auld Lang Syne, and I talked about why we actually sing that song that nobody knows and everyone forgot the meaning of it. The whole song is about not forgetting. The whole song is about bringing to mind these strange and fantastic times that were once ours. That remembering our own origins, our own stories, where we came from, how things were created, how things were made, and ultimately what we're going to go back to. All right, we're going to touch on this subject a little bit more in the future. I think I covered most of the things that I wanted to cover for today, at least. I think we'll probably come back and maybe talk some more about Lemuria and Mu. If you guys are interested, let me know in the comment section. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
The